Voicemail stopped me cold. Not the words exactly, it was the pause before them. 3 full seconds of silence, like whoever was calling had to steel themselves to speak at all. "This is going to sound strange," the woman's voice said quietly, "but I think you need to know what your husband has been doing at work. Check his bottom desk drawer, the one with the lock. I'm sorry, I really am." That was it. No name, no callback number, just a 214 area code I didn't recognize, and that apology hanging in the air like smoke. "My name is June Callahan. I'm 31 years old. I teach third grade at Ridgewood Elementary. I make my own cold brew. I fold laundry while watching true crime docs. And until that Thursday morning in October, I genuinely believed I was happy. Not fairy tale happy. Real happy. The kind that's quiet and a little boring and exactly right. My husband, Derek, was a regional sales manager at a medical device company. Good salary, company car, the kind of job that sounds impressive at dinner parties even when you're not entirely sure what he does all day. We'd been married 4 years, together for 6. We had a mortgage in Plano, Texas, a rescue dog named Biscuit, and standing reservations at the Thai place on Coit Road every Friday night. I almost deleted the voicemail. My thumb hovered over the button. Some deep instinct said, "Don't open this door. Whatever is behind it will change everything." I played it 3 more times instead. I told myself I was being rational, that it could be a wrong number, a jealous coworker, a misunderstanding. I cycled through every possible innocent explanation the way you do when your brain is desperately trying to protect you from something it already knows. But I kept hearing that pause, that 3 second silence. That pause wasn't a wrong number. That pause was someone deciding whether to blow up a stranger's life. Derek's home office was the second bedroom we'd never managed to convert into anything else. A desk, a filing cabinet, a shelf of industry binders nobody ever opened. The room smelled like him, cedar from his cologne, faintly metallic, the way a closed space gets when one specific person uses it every day. I'd been in there hundreds of times to grab the stapler, to leave his mail, to plug in the router when it dropped signal. I knew that desk. I knew the top drawer with the pens and the post-it pads and the expired Advil. I knew the middle drawer with the charging cables. I had never once thought about the bottom drawer. It had a small key lock on it. I'd noticed it the way you notice things you have no reason to question. Locked drawers exist. People keep personal things private. I was not a suspicious wife. Until that moment, standing in the doorway in my pajamas, holding my phone with a voicemail still ringing in my ears. I looked up how to open a small desk lock with a bobby pin. It took me 11 minutes and 3 YouTube tutorials. When the lock finally gave with a soft click, I almost felt proud of myself. Then I pulled the drawer open. For a second, my brain refused to assemble what I was seeing into meaning. There were folders, printed documents, a separate phone, a cheap prepaid thing with a cracked screen, and sitting right on top, a manila envelope with my name written on it in handwriting I didn't recognize. "For June, in case he finds this first." I sat down on the floor right there, not intentionally. My legs just gave. I opened the envelope. Her name was Adrienne. She'd worked in Derek's regional office for 2 years as his executive assistant. The letter was 4 pages, handwritten on yellow legal pad paper, and she wrote the way someone writes when they've been carrying something too long and finally have to set it down. She and Derek had been involved. Past tense, she was very clear about that. It had ended, she wrote, when she found out what he was actually doing. She found out by accident the way these things tend to happen. She'd been covering for him during a client emergency, logged into his work laptop with credentials he'd shared, and found a folder mislabeled as quarterly projections. It wasn't quarterly projections. It was documentation of a scheme Derek had been running for at least 3 years. He was accepting kickbacks from a medical supply vendor in exchange for steering his company's purchase orders toward them, even when cheaper and better options existed. He'd funneled the money through a shell LLC registered in Nevada, a company with a name that sounded legitimate, Summit Bridge Consulting, and a P.O. box as its only address. The payments were categorized as consulting fees. The amounts, across 3 years, totaled somewhere north of $340,000. But that wasn't the part that made my hands start shaking. Adrienne had confronted him. She'd told him she knew, that she was going to report it, and Derek had smiled at her. She described it exactly like that he smiled, and told her that he had emails, manufactured emails, she said, a chain that had been carefully constructed to make it appear that Adrian herself had been the one soliciting the vendors, had been the one receiving the payments. He'd built a parallel paper trail with her name on it. He'd been building it, she suspected, as insurance from the moment he started. If she reported him, he would report her first. And his version looked cleaner, more complete, more credible. She'd quit instead, given 2 weeks' notice, said it was for personal reasons, and started looking for a new job. But before she left, she copied every file she could access, printed what she could, and she'd found my name in his personnel file, listed as emergency contact, and she had memorized my number. It took her 3 weeks to work up the nerve to call. At the bottom of the letter, she'd written, "I know you have no reason to trust me. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to look at what's in the folders and decide for yourself. I'm sorry I didn't find a way to tell you sooner. I think he's been lying to you about a lot of things for a very long time." I sat on that floor until Biscuit pushed the door open and came to find me. He put his head in my lap the way dogs do when they know something is wrong, and I held onto the back of his neck and just breathed. Then I opened the first folder. Derek came home at 6:40 that evening. I heard the garage door. I heard his keys on the hook by the door, Biscuit's nails scrambling on the hardwood to greet him. I heard his voice doing that thing where he talks to the dog in a higher register, all warmth and silliness, the voice I had once thought was one of the most endearing things about him. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of water I hadn't touched. "Hey, babe," he called. "In here," I said. He came in still loosening his tie. He always did that the second he got home, this unwinding ritual I'd watched so many times it had become invisible. He looked at me. He looked at me face. And something shifted behind his eyes. "What's wrong?" "Long day," I said. "How was yours?" He sat down across from me. "Fine. The Dallas meeting ran long. You eating? I was thinking we could order from that barbecue place." "Sure," I said. I watched him pull out his phone to look up the menu. His hands were steady. His voice was normal. He had the kind of composure that I used to think was a strength, that unflappable quality that made him good at sales, at negotiation, at managing difficult clients. A man who never rattled. I was seeing it differently now. "Hey," he said, not looking up from his phone. "Have you been in my office today?" And there it was. A casual question, asked without urgency as if he was just checking whether I'd grabbed the stapler again. I felt the cold move through me slowly, like ice water being poured down my spine. "No," I said. "Why?" "No reason." He set his phone down. "Just thought I left something on the desk." He was testing me. Not dramatically, not with suspicion or accusation. Just quietly, carefully. Exactly the way someone tests for danger without wanting the other person to know they're being tested. He didn't know I'd been in the drawer. He couldn't know. I'd relocked it, replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. But he sensed something. Or maybe he just always operated this way, running small checks the way you'd check a fence line for breaches. "What do you want from the barbecue place?" he asked. "The brisket," I said. We ate dinner. We watched 40 minutes of a documentary about national parks. He fell asleep on the couch the way he always did, remote in hand. Biscuit curled against his legs. I sat beside them both and thought about $340,000 and a shell company in Nevada, and a woman named Adrian who'd had to choose between her career and her conscience. And I thought about the smile Adrian had described, that specific, private, cold smile. And I thought about how well I apparently did not know the man sleeping 3 feet away from me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark and listened to Derek breathe and made a list in my head. I was a third-grade teacher. My salary was $52,000 a year. Our mortgage was $2,300 a month. We had a joint checking account, a joint savings account, and a joint investment account that Derek managed because he said he was better at it, and I had believed him. I did not know the current balance of that investment account. I had not looked at it in over a year. That thought alone sat in my chest like a stone. By the time gray light came through the curtains, I had decided 3 things. First, I was not going to confront him. Not yet. Not without understanding exactly what I was dealing with. Second, I needed help from someone who knew things I didn't. Third, I needed copies of everything before he realized the envelope was gone. The next morning I got up at my normal time. Made coffee the way I always did. Kissed Derek on the cheek before he left and said, "Have a good day," the way I always said it. His shoulders visibly relaxed when I did that. That small, automatic relaxation told me everything I needed to know about how worried he'd been the night before. The moment his car turned out of the neighborhood, I went back into the office. I photographed every page in every folder with my phone. I downloaded the photos to my Google Drive, shared the folder to a dummy Gmail account I created in 3 minutes at my kitchen counter, then texted the link to my sister in Denver with a message that said, "Don't ask questions right now. Just save this link somewhere safe. I'll explain soon. Love you." She texted back 4 question marks and then, "Are you safe?" "Yes," I told her. "Working on it." I found the family attorney's number through a law school friend of my sister's, a woman who specialized in marital asset law and specifically in cases involving financial fraud. Her office was in Addison, 20 minutes away. I called from my car in the school parking lot during my lunch break. Crouched low in the driver's seat with the windows up like I was doing something illegal, which I suppose felt that way even though I wasn't. She could see me Thursday. I said I'd be there. Then I called our bank, and quietly asked for a copy of our joint account statements for the past 3 years. I gave them my social security number, my date of birth, my mother's maiden name, every verification they asked for, and I requested that the statements be mailed to my classroom at school. After school, I drove to a FedEx and printed everything I'd photographed from the drawer. I put the copies in a manila envelope and addressed it to my sister. I mailed it priority. When I got home, Derek was already there. He'd left work early, which he almost never did. "Thought I'd make dinner," he said from the kitchen. He was standing at the stove doing something with chicken and garlic that smelled incredible, and I felt a sudden, absurd wave of grief. Not for the future, but for the past. For the version of this kitchen where things were fine. For all the Friday nights of the Thai place. For the certainty I used to have that whatever else was true, I at least knew the person I'd married. "That's nice," I said, and put my bag down and went to wash my hands. We had a pleasant dinner. Derek was warm, present, engaged, asking about my students, telling a story about a coworker that made me laugh despite everything. He poured wine. He cleared the table. He suggested we take Biscuit for a walk, which we did, around the neighborhood in the cool October dark, and he reached over and held my hand the way he used to when we were first together. The grief kept hitting me in waves. I let it come and let it go and kept walking. He was performing, I understood now, not necessarily for my benefit. Maybe he was always like this, always calibrating, always maintaining the surface. Or maybe he did love me in whatever limited way he was capable of and was simply also a person who could do what he had done. People held contradictions. I was learning that in real time. What he could not do, I had decided, was keep what he had stolen. The meeting with the attorney lasted 2 hours. I spread Adrian's letter, the photographs, the printed documents, and 3 years of bank statements across her conference table, and she went through them with a methodical patience that I found steadying. She was small and precise and entirely unimpressed by what she was reading, which I found oddly comforting, as if the outrageousness of what Derek had done was too ordinary to shock someone in her position. "The financial fraud is a federal matter," she said, not looking up from the documents. "Wire fraud? Likely. The kickback scheme, the shell company, forged records. That's FBI territory, not divorce court. These are separate tracks." "I understand. You'll want to file for divorce on grounds that trigger equitable distribution of concealed assets in Texas. The $340,000, or whatever the actual total is once forensic accounting gets involved, that would be considered marital property if it was accumulated during the marriage, even if he was the one diverting it. Even if he was the one diverting it, you have a claim." I thought about my $52,000 salary and felt something that wasn't quite anger and wasn't quite satisfaction, but lived in the same neighborhood as both. "There's also the question of the false records he created involving his former assistant," she said. "If she's willing to provide a statement." "She's the one who told me," I said. She looked up at me for the first time. "You've spoken to her?" "She left a letter in his desk with copies of everything." A brief pause. "Have you been in contact with her since?" "Not yet. I have her number." "Call her," she said. "Today if possible." She walked me through the next steps with a calm precision that cut through the fog I'd been living in all week. We would file quietly. She would request a temporary restraining order on the joint financial accounts pending discovery, which would prevent Derek from moving or liquidating assets once he was served. A forensic accountant she worked with regularly would begin tracing the money. We would contact the FBI field office in Dallas with a referral from her firm, along with the document package. "He thinks you don't know," she said. "Yes. That's an advantage. Don't give it up until we're ready." On the drive home, I called Adrienne. She answered on the second ring with a voice that was cautious and a little raw, like someone who'd been waiting for a call they weren't sure would come. "You found it," she said. "I found it," she exhaled. "How are you doing?" "I don't know yet," I said. "I think I'm still in the part where you just do the next thing." "Yeah." A pause. "That's the part where you have to be." She agreed to provide a full statement. She'd kept copies of everything she'd taken from the office, stored on a hard drive at her parents' house in Fort Worth. She'd already consulted with her own attorney about her exposure, the manufactured paper trail Derek had built, and her attorney believed that the existence of the original documents, her letter, and her willingness to cooperate with investigators would be sufficient to demonstrate the fabrication. She said, "I should have called you sooner. I kept thinking I was protecting you by staying out of it." "You did call," I said. "That's what matters." "I'm sorry about your marriage." I didn't say anything for a moment. We were on the highway, Plano sprawling flat and familiar around me, the ordinary geography of the life I'd been living. "I think I'm sorrier about the version of it that apparently never existed," I said. She didn't push me to say more. I liked her for that. For 10 days, I was an exceptional actress. I packed lunches. I attended a parent-teacher conference. I graded papers on the couch while Derek watched football. I went to the grocery store with his credit card and bought the expensive coffee he liked and the oat milk I kept telling myself I'd switch to, and I felt nothing when I put them in the cart except a distant, administrative satisfaction. He grew more comfortable. I could feel it. The gradual loosening of whatever low-level vigilance he'd maintained since the night I didn't touch my water glass. He stopped coming home early. He stopped asking if I'd been in his office. He booked a long weekend trip, November, to a lake house near Broken Bow, Oklahoma. He'd done it spontaneously, he said, because we needed a real break, and he was excited about it. Showing me photos on his phone, talking about kayaking and unplugging, and I said it sounded perfect and I meant exactly nothing by that. The lake house was the kind of thing the exit plan in his documents had described. A remote location. Just the two of them. No witnesses. I had read those documents. 3 days before we were supposed to leave for Broken Bow, the doorbell rang at 7:40 in the morning. Derek was in the shower. I was standing at the kitchen counter in my robe with my coffee. I opened the door to a woman in a gray blazer and a man in a windbreaker with FBI printed across the chest, and 2 uniformed officers standing at the edge of our driveway. The woman showed me her badge. "Good morning, we're looking for Derek Callahan." "He's upstairs," I said. "I'll get him." She looked at me carefully. Something in my voice, or my posture, or the simple fact that I hadn't registered the surprise she'd expected. "Mrs. Callahan," she said. "Were you aware?" "I was the one who provided the documents," I said. She nodded slowly, a small recalibration happening somewhere behind her eyes. "We have some questions for you as well, if you're willing." "I'm willing," I said. "Would you like coffee while you wait? He takes a while in the shower." When Derek came downstairs in his work clothes and found 4 federal agents and his wife sitting at his kitchen table, the color left his face so completely and so suddenly, it was almost like watching something technical happen. A circuit cutting out. He looked at me, really looked at me, with the disorientation of a man who has just realized that the person he thought he understood most completely in the world has been several steps ahead of him the entire time. "June," he said. "What is this?" "Derek Callahan," the agent in the gray blazer said, standing. "You're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent." He kept looking at me while they read him his rights. Like if he could hold my gaze long enough, I might call it off. Like I was a problem he still thought he could manage. I picked up my coffee cup. I had been a third-grade teacher for 8 years. I knew how to hold the attention of 23 8-year-olds simultaneously. I knew how to maintain a calm, pleasant expression while managing total chaos. I knew how to wait when they walked him out through our front door, past the driveway where our neighbors were beginning to notice. Into the morning that was cold and ordinary and completely broken open, he said my name one more time. I closed the door gently. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after that. Biscuit came and sat on my feet. The coffee got cold. Somewhere in the house, a faucet Derek had never fixed dripped in the upstairs bathroom. 4 years of dripping, one of those small annoyances that becomes invisible until the person responsible for fixing it is gone. I listened to a drip. I thought about a woman I'd never met, sitting in a Fort Worth house who'd had to choose between her own safety and a stranger's right to know the truth, and who'd chosen the stranger. I thought about my sister in Denver, who had a manila envelope in her filing cabinet and was waiting for me to explain. I thought about all the Friday nights at the Thai place, and I tried to let them be what they were. Real, at the time, in whatever limited way things can be real when they're built on a foundation you didn't know was hollow. The divorce attorney filed on Monday, the forensic accountants started on Wednesday, the FBI case moved forward on its own track, grinding slowly the way federal cases do toward a reckoning I wouldn't be present for, but that would happen nonetheless. I went back to school on Tuesday, sat at my low kidney table, and listened to my students read aloud. And when they got stuck on words, I waited, the way you wait for someone who just needs a moment to find what they're reaching for. My students thought I was good at teaching. I think I was just good at patience, at watching carefully, at knowing when to wait and when to move. It turns out, when your life requires it, those things are not so different. I keep thinking about that 11 minutes on the floor of his office with a bobby pin in my hand. Not the arrest. Not the attorney's conference table covered in folders. That part felt large and consequential in the way that significant things do. But the 11 minutes, 3 YouTube tutorials, a cheap bobby pin, shaking hands, that's the part that stays with me. Because that's where I decided who I was going to be about this. There's something I've come to understand about the way things unfold when someone chooses to build their life on deception. It doesn't collapse all at once. It unravels slowly, one thread at a time, and usually because of something small, a voicemail, a pause, a locked drawer that nobody questioned for 4 years. Derek was careful. He was methodical. He had constructed an entire parallel reality with real documents and real money and real contingency plans, and it still came apart. Not because the universe has a preference for justice, but because sustained dishonesty requires every single variable to hold, and variables don't hold. People like Adrian exist. Strangers with consciences exist. 3-second silences on voicemails exist. I think about Adrian a lot. She had every reason to stay quiet. She had her own exposure, her own fear, her own manufactured paper trail with her name on it that Derek had spent real time constructing. Staying silent was the rational, self-protective move, and she called anyway. She sat with my number for 3 weeks and then she called. That decision, that small, costly act of doing the right thing when doing the right thing had a real price, is what made everything else possible. I will never stop being grateful for it. Integrity isn't abstract. It shows up as a specific person making a specific choice on a specific afternoon, and the ripples from that choice go further than they can see. What I learned about myself during those 10 days of playing normal, packing lunches, grading papers, buying his expensive coffee, is that I am steadier than I knew. Not brave in some cinematic way, just steady, capable of taking the next step when the next step is all I could see. I didn't have a full plan when I photographed those documents. I had one action: make copies, then one more, call my sister, then one more, find an attorney. Clarity came from movement, not the other way around. I think that's how it works for most people in impossible situations. You don't wait until you know everything. You do the one thing in front of you, and then the next thing reveals itself. And I think about what I'm teaching, not just at Ridgewood Elementary, but in the way I moved through those 10 days. My students are 8 years old. They're learning how to handle being wrong, being afraid, being stuck on a word they can't quite reach. I wait for them. I don't panic. I trust that they'll get there if I give them the space to work through it. I needed to give myself the same patience, to trust that I could figure this out if I just kept moving forward instead of freezing. Derek had intelligence without any of that. He was clever enough to build something elaborate and foolish enough to believe it was permanent. Cleverness in the service of something hollow eventually turns on itself. I saw it happen in real time in the color draining from his face at 7:40 on a Tuesday morning. What lasts isn't the scheme, it's the 11 minutes on the floor. It's the call Adrian made anyway. It's the steadiness you find when you have no other option but to find it. I'm still in Plano. The faucet upstairs is fixed now. I called a plumber the week after Derek left. Biscuit still sleeps at the foot of the bed. I still make cold brew every morning. Some things you rebuild, some things you just finally get to keep.